The roar of jet engines cuts through the Nevada dawn as another generation of America's finest prepares to push the boundaries of what's possible in the unforgiving skies above. At Nellis Air Force Base, where legends are forged and heroes are born, a young woman carries the weight of family legacy on her shoulders and the dreams of breaking barriers in her heart. In a world where precision means the difference between life and death, where split-second decisions echo across generations, and where tradition must dance with innovation to achieve the impossible, Captain Elena Rodriguez is about to discover that the greatest battles aren't always fought against external enemies. Sometimes, they're fought against the limitations others place on our potential. This is a story of courage that transcends gender, of excellence that defies expectations, and of a grandfather's wisdom that travels from the jungles of Vietnam to the cockpit of an F-22 Raptor. It's about the moment when everything you've trained for, everything you've sacrificed, and everything you believe in converges into a single mission that will either validate a lifetime of preparation or shatter dreams that took decades to build. When 47 innocent lives hang in the balance, and conventional wisdom says the mission is impossible, Elena must reach deep into her family's military heritage to find techniques that predate modern technology, and prove that sometimes the oldest lessons are the ones that matter most when everything is on the line. We'd love to know where you're joining us from today. Drop a comment letting us know your location, and tell us what draws you to stories about military aviation and the brave men and women who serve in our armed forces. Get ready for a journey that will take you from the dusty training ranges of Texas to the elite corridors of America's most secretive military programs, where tradition meets innovation and where one woman's determination to honor her grandfather's legacy will redefine what it means to be a Sky Reaper. Buckle up. This is Elena Rodriguez's story, and it's about to take flight. The Texas sun hung low over the Rodriguez ranch, casting long shadows across the weathered shooting range where 3 generations of military tradition had been forged. Captain Elena Rodriguez adjusted her grip on the vintage rifle, feeling the familiar weight of her grandfather's teachings in every measured breath. "Remember, Mija," Sergeant Major Carlos Rodriguez said, his weathered hands steady despite his 75 years. "Precision isn't about the weapon, it's about the warrior's heart." His voice carried the authority of a man who had served 2 tours in Vietnam and earned 3 Purple Hearts. The faded tattoo on his forearm, an eagle clutching arrows, spoke of battles fought and won in jungles half a world away. Elena squeezed the trigger with the same methodical control she had learned as a child on this very range. The distant target shuddered as the bullet found its mark, dead center. Her grandfather nodded approvingly, his grey eyes reflecting pride that ran deeper than words. "The boys at Nellis won't understand your methods," Carlos continued, lowering his binoculars. "They'll call them old-fashioned, maybe even primitive. But what they don't realize is that technology without soul is just noise." He gestured toward the setting sun, where the silhouette of a commercial airliner traced its path across the orange sky. "Those fancy computers and laser sights can fail you, but this," he tapped his chest, "this never will." Elena set down the rifle and turned to face the man who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. His uniform from decades past hung in a place of honor in the ranch house, but the discipline and honor it represented lived on in every lesson he had taught her. "I'm scared, Abuelo," she admitted, using the childhood name that still felt natural on her lips. "The Sky Reapers program. I'll be the only woman among 24 of the military's best pilots. They're already saying I don't belong." Carlos reached into his shirt pocket and withdrew a small box, its leather surface worn smooth by decades of handling. Inside lay his military academy ring, the gold dulled, but the eagle emblem still sharp and proud. "This ring has seen 3 wars and more battles than I care to remember. It's been with me through the darkest moments and the greatest victories." He lifted it carefully, holding it up to catch the last rays of sunlight. "I want you to have it." Elena's breath caught in her throat. "Abuelo, I can't. This is your legacy." "No, Mija, you are my legacy." He slipped the ring onto her right hand, where it fit perfectly despite being made for a man's finger decades ago. "When they laugh at your techniques, when they question your methods, when they try to break your spirit, remember that you carry the honor of every Rodriguez who has served this country." The weight of the ring felt substantial, not just in gold, but in responsibility. Elena looked down at the eagle emblem, its wings spread wide as if ready to take flight. In just 12 hours, she would board a transport plane to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, where the most elite aerial combat training program in the world would test every skill her grandfather had taught her. "The Sky Reapers aren't just pilots," Carlos said, his voice taking on the tone of a military briefing. "They're precision artists who can hit targets from a moving aircraft at speeds that would make most people lose consciousness. It's a combination of flying skill and marksmanship that pushes human capability to its absolute limit." Elena nodded, remembering the classified briefings she had studied. The Sky Reapers conducted missions that existed in the gray areas between conventional warfare and special operations, surgical strikes that required the precision of a sniper combined with the speed and maneuverability of a fighter pilot. "General Morrison will be watching you closely," Carlos continued. "I served under his father in Vietnam. Good family, but they believe in earning respect through action, not words. Show him what Rodriguez blood can accomplish." As darkness settled over the ranch, Elena and her grandfather walked back toward the house, where 3 generations of military photographs lined the hallway. Her great-grandfather in his World War II uniform, her grandfather in Vietnam-era fatigues, and soon her own portrait would join them, if she succeeded. "Promise me something," Carlos said as they reached the front porch. "Whatever happens at Nellis, whatever they say or do to try to break you down, remember that you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for every woman who will come after you, and for every tradition that's worth preserving." Elena embraced her grandfather, feeling the strength in his arms that age had not diminished. "I promise, abuelo, I'll make you proud. You already have, mija. Now go show them what a Rodriguez can do." The next morning, as Elena's transport plane lifted off from San Antonio, she touched the ring on her finger and felt her grandfather's presence with her. Below, the Texas landscape grew smaller, but the lessons learned on that dusty shooting range would travel with her into whatever challenges awaited at Nellis Air Force Base. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly beyond the reinforced windows of Nellis Air Force Base, its harsh beauty a stark contrast to the green hills of Elena's Texas home. At 0500 hours, the Sky Reapers training facility hummed with the controlled chaos of military precision, the distant roar of F-22 Raptors conducting morning exercises, the sharp commands of drill instructors, and the metallic clang of equipment being prepared for another day of pushing human limits. Elena stood at attention with 23 other candidates in Hangar 7, the most advanced training facility on the base. The morning briefing had been brutal in its clarity. Only 8 would graduate from the 12-week program. The rest would return to their regular units, their dreams of joining the military's most elite aerial combat squadron reduced to classified footnotes in their service records. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Master Sergeant Patricia Hayes, her voice cutting through the hangar like a precision instrument, "today you begin the most demanding training program in military aviation. You will learn to engage targets from aircraft traveling at Mach 2.5 while maintaining accuracy that would challenge a stationary sniper." Elena's eyes swept across her fellow candidates. Most were men in their late 20s and early 30s, their uniforms decorated with ribbons that spoke of combat experience and exceptional service records. At the far end of the formation stood Captain Marcus "Hawk" Thompson, his 6'2" frame radiating the confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in any room he entered. Hawk's reputation had preceded him to Nellis. Third-generation military, top graduate from the Air Force Academy, and holder of multiple aerial combat records. His father had been a Sky Reaper, his grandfather a Tuskegee airman. When he looked at Elena, his blue eyes held the cold assessment of someone evaluating a piece of equipment that didn't belong in his workshop. "Rodriguez," Sergeant Hayes called out, consulting her tablet. "Step forward." Elena moved with the measured precision her grandfather had drilled into her since childhood. Every step was deliberate, every movement economical. She could feel 23 pairs of eyes evaluating her, measuring her against their expectations of what a Sky Reaper should look like. "You're our diversity candidate," Hayes stated matter-of-factly. "First woman to make it this far in the selection process. The media's watching, the Pentagon's watching, and every feminist organization in the country is watching. How does that feel?" "Ma'am, I'm here to serve my country and earn my place through performance, not politics," Elena replied, her voice steady despite the weight of scrutiny. A few candidates exchanged glances. Hawk's expression remained unreadable, But Elena caught the slight upturn at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, more like the look of a predator sizing up prey. The first exercise took place in the Advanced Flight Simulator, a technological marvel that could replicate the G-forces and sensory overload of actual combat. Each candidate would pilot a virtual F-22 through a series of precision strikes while maintaining formation and avoiding simulated enemy fire. Elena watched as candidate after candidate entered the simulator. Most emerged looking shaken, their scores displayed on the overhead monitors for all to see. Hawk scored 92%, the highest of the morning, earning nods of approval from the instructors. When Elena's turn came, she settled into the simulator's cockpit and felt the familiar calm that had always preceded her best shooting performances. The virtual landscape materialized around her, a hostile urban environment where precision meant the difference between eliminating threats and causing civilian casualties. As the simulation began, Elena applied the breathing techniques her grandfather had taught her. Instead of relying solely on the aircraft's targeting systems, she calculated wind patterns, distance, and trajectory, using methods that predated computer assistance by decades. Her shots found their marks with mechanical precision, but her approach looked different from the high-tech methods employed by her peers. When she emerged from the simulator, the hangar had fallen unusually quiet. Her score, 94%, glowed on the monitor, but the silence that greeted it felt more like skepticism than celebration. "Interesting technique, Rodriguez," commented Lieutenant Colonel James Phoenix Carter, the program's senior instructor. His green eyes held curiosity rather than judgment. "Where did you learn to calculate targeting solutions manually?" "My grandfather, sir. Sergeant Major Carlos Rodriguez, Vietnam veteran. He taught me that technology enhances capability, but shouldn't replace fundamental skills." Hawk stepped forward, his voice carrying just enough volume for the entire group to hear. "With respect, sir, we're training for modern warfare, not fighting the Viet Cong with bolt-action rifles. Those old-school methods might work in a simulator, but real combat requires split-second decisions that computers make better than human intuition." Several candidates nodded in agreement. Elena felt the familiar sting of being dismissed, but her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. "Let your performance speak louder than their doubts." "We'll see about that, Thompson," Lieutenant Colonel Carter replied. "Tomorrow we move to live-fire exercises. Real aircraft, real weapons, real consequences for mistakes." That evening, Elena sat alone in her quarters, a Spartan room that housed her few personal belongings and a secure phone line for communication with family. The international news played softly on her tablet. Tensions rising in the Middle East, diplomatic negotiations stalling, the kind of global instability that often preceded the missions Sky Reapers were called upon to execute. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandfather. "How was day one, Mija?" Elena stared at the message for a long moment before typing her reply. "They think your methods are outdated, abuelo." "Maybe they're right." The response came quickly. "A tree with deep roots weathers storms that topple newer growth. Trust in what you know, and let time prove its worth." She touched the military ring on her finger, feeling its weight and the responsibility it represented. Outside her window, the Nevada desert stretched toward distant mountains, vast and unforgiving. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that tradition and innovation could coexist. But tonight, Elena Rodriguez allowed herself a moment of doubt, wondering if she had the strength to honor her family's legacy while forging a path that no woman had walked before. In the distance, the sound of late-night training exercises echoed across the base, the roar of engines and the whistle of ordnance that reminded everyone at Nellis that their training had real-world consequences. Somewhere in the world, situations were developing that might soon require the precision and courage that the Sky Reapers represented. Elena closed her eyes and began the breathing exercises her grandfather had taught her, preparing her mind and spirit for whatever tomorrow would bring. The pre-dawn darkness at Nellis Air Force Base carried a chill that cut through flight suits and settled into bones. Elena had been awake since 0300 hours, unable to sleep after the previous day's live-fire exercise had ended in humiliation. Her targeting approach, methodical, calculated, rooted in her grandfather's teachings, had been publicly dissected by instructors who favored speed over precision. She made her way to the auxiliary training range, a smaller facility where candidates could practice during off hours. The security guard barely glanced at her identification as she signed in, another sleepless pilot seeking perfection in the Nevada darkness. What Elena didn't know was that General William Iron Eagle Morrison stood watching from the observation tower, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee that had long since gone cold. At 58, Morrison had seen enough young pilots to recognize dedication when it manifested at 0:30 on a voluntary basis. "Sir," Master Sergeant Hayes appeared beside him, her own early arrival explained by the stack of evaluation reports in her hands. "Didn't expect to see you here this early." Morrison nodded toward the range where Elena was setting up equipment with the methodical precision of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. "Rodriguez, third time this week I've seen her out here before sunrise. What's your assessment?" "Technically proficient, sir. Unconventional methods, but her accuracy scores are consistently high. The problem is integration with the team." Hayes consulted her tablet. "Yesterday's formation exercise was problematic," Morrison remembered. The exercise had been designed to test coordination under pressure, multiple aircraft engaging targets, while maintaining formation integrity. Elena's deliberate, calculated approach had disrupted the rhythm that the other candidates had established. What should have been a synchronized ballet of precision had become an awkward dance of mismatched timing. "Thompson's been vocal about his concerns," Hayes continued. "Says her methods are a liability in real combat situations." Down on the range, Elena was practicing the breathing techniques her grandfather had taught her, each exhale timed to the natural pause between heartbeats. Morrison watched her settle into a shooting stance that looked more like meditation than military training. "My father served with her grandfather in Vietnam," Morrison said quietly. "Carlos Rodriguez earned 3 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star for actions that are still classified. If she's anything like him, writing her off would be a mistake." The morning briefing in Hangar 7 carried an undercurrent of tension that had been building for weeks. Elena took her position in formation, acutely aware of the subtle ways her fellow candidates had begun to isolate her. Conversations stopped when she approached. Training partnerships formed without including her, and the informal networks that sustained morale had closed their ranks. "Today's exercise simulates a high-value target elimination in an urban environment," announced Lieutenant Colonel Carter. "You'll be working in teams of 4. Precision is paramount. Civilian casualties result in automatic failure." Elena watched as teams formed around natural alliances and established friendships. When the dust settled, she found herself assigned to Team Delta with 3 candidates who made no effort to hide their reluctance to work with her. Hawk approached as the teams prepared for briefing. His presence commanded attention even in casual conversation, and Elena noticed how other candidates unconsciously straightened their postures when he spoke. "Rodriguez," he said, his tone carrying the false friendliness of someone delivering bad news with a smile. "Heard you've been burning the midnight oil on the practice range. Admirable dedication, but maybe it's time to consider that some problems can't be solved with more practice." "What's that supposed to mean, Thompson?" "It means that individual excellence doesn't matter if you can't function as part of a team. The Sky Reapers aren't a collection of lone wolves. We're a precision instrument that requires every component to work in harmony." Elena felt the weight of 22 pairs of eyes watching the exchange. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a public challenge to her place in the program. "I've never failed to complete a mission objective," she replied, keeping her voice level despite the anger building in her chest. "Mission objectives are just numbers on a scorecard. What matters is whether your teammates trust you to have their backs when everything goes sideways." Hawk's blue eyes held no warmth. "Right now, I'm not sure anyone in this hangar would feel comfortable flying into combat with you." The words hit harder than Elena expected, not because they were cruel, but because they contained enough truth to sting. She had been so focused on proving her individual competence that she had failed to build the relationships that made teams function. Team Delta's mission briefing revealed a complex scenario: 4 high-value targets in a crowded marketplace, with civilian foot traffic creating a constantly changing environment. Success required split-second coordination and absolute trust between team members. Elena's teammates made their skepticism clear during the planning phase. When she suggested modifications to their approach based on her grandfather's teachings about patience and precision, they exchanged glances that spoke louder than words. "Look, Rodriguez," said Captain Mike Viper Stevens, Team Delta's informal leader, "we appreciate your input, but we've trained together for 8 weeks. We know how each other thinks, how each other moves. Your methods, they're just too different." The simulation began with Elena feeling like an outsider, trying to force her way into a conversation that had been going on without her. Her teammates executed their approaches with the fluid coordination of musicians who had rehearsed together for months. Elena's more deliberate style created gaps in their timing that grew wider with each engagement. When the exercise ended, Team Delta had achieved only a 68% success rate, well below the standard required for Sky Reaper certification. The post-mission debrief was brutal in its clinical assessment of failure. "Rodriguez," Lieutenant Colonel Carter's voice carried disappointment that cut deeper than anger. "Your individual performance was technically sound, but your inability to integrate with your team compromised the entire mission. In real combat, that kind of coordination failure gets people killed." Elena stood at attention, feeling the weight of failure settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Around her, she could sense the satisfaction of those who had predicted this outcome, the vindication of those who had argued that she didn't belong. "Sir, request permission to speak," she said, her voice steady, despite the turmoil in her chest. "Granted. I take full responsibility for the team's performance. I failed to adapt my methods to support the unit's success. It won't happen again." Carter studied her for a long moment. "Rodriguez, report to my office at 1900 hours. We need to discuss your future in this program." The dismissal felt like a physical blow. Elena maintained her military bearing until she was outside the hangar, then allowed herself a moment of private anguish. She had come so far, sacrificed so much, carried the hopes of her grandfather, and the expectations of everyone who believed that barriers could be broken through competence and determination. Now it seemed that competence wasn't enough. The military was a team sport, and she had been playing as an individual. That evening, Elena sat in her quarters with her secure phone, staring at her grandfather's number. The conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Carter had been professional but clear. Her technical skills were exceptional, but her inability to function as part of a team made her unsuitable for Sky Reaper operations. She had 1 week to demonstrate improvement, or she would be transferred back to her regular unit. When she finally dialed the number, her grandfather's voice carried the warmth of home across the miles. "Mija, you sound troubled." Elena found herself telling him everything: the isolation, the failed exercise, the ultimatum that hung over her future. When she finished, silence stretched between them like the desert that separated Texas from Nevada. "Your grandmother used to say that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire," Carlos finally said. "Maybe this isn't about changing who you are, Mija. Maybe it's about finding a way to be yourself while lifting others up." "I don't know how, Abuelo. They've already decided I don't belong." "Then you'll have to prove them wrong. Not by becoming someone else, but by showing them that your way of doing things can make the whole team stronger." After the call ended, Elena sat in the darkness of her quarters, touching the ring on her finger and thinking about legacy. Her grandfather had faced his own challenges in Vietnam, had probably felt the same isolation and doubt that now threatened to overwhelm her. Outside her window, the lights of Nellis Air Force Base stretched toward the horizon, each one representing someone who had chosen to serve something larger than themselves. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that tradition and innovation could coexist. But tonight, Elena Rodriguez allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she was fighting for, not just her own dreams, but the dreams of every woman who would follow in her footsteps. In the distance, the sound of late-night news broadcasts drifted from other quarters, carrying reports of increasing tensions in the Middle East and diplomatic negotiations that seemed to be failing. The world was becoming a more dangerous place, and the skills that the Sky Reapers represented might soon be needed in ways that none of them could imagine. The Nevada dawn painted the sky in shades of amber and crimson as Elena completed her 5th consecutive morning of solitary training. Her movements had taken on a ritualistic quality. Each breath measured, each shot deliberate, each moment of silence between heartbeats utilized for perfect precision. From the observation tower, General Morrison watched through binoculars, noting the way she had begun to modify her grandfather's techniques. The fundamental principles remained unchanged, but Elena was adapting them for modern warfare, finding ways to integrate traditional marksmanship with contemporary tactical requirements. "She's been out there every morning this week," Master Sergeant Hayes observed, joining the general with her daily reports. "Her individual scores have improved by 12%, but the team integration issues persist." Morrison lowered his binoculars, Sometimes the best leaders are the ones who have to fight hardest for their place. My father told me stories about her grandfather. Carlos Rodriguez never backed down from a challenge, never let others define his limitations. The morning briefing carried an undercurrent of global tension that had been building throughout the week. Lieutenant Colonel Carter stood before a wall-mounted display showing satellite imagery of the Middle East, where diplomatic negotiations had reached a critical impasse. Current intelligence suggests that terrorist organizations are exploiting the political instability, Carter announced. Multiple high-value targets have been identified, and the situation is deteriorating rapidly. While we continue training, be aware that real-world deployment could come at any time. Elena felt the weight of those words. The Sky Reapers weren't just an elite training program, they were a rapid response capability that could be activated within hours of a crisis developing. Hawk raised his hand. Sir, what's the likelihood of deployment during the training cycle? Higher than we'd prefer, Thompson, which is why today's exercise is critical. We're testing your ability to adapt under pressure, to function as a cohesive unit when everything goes wrong. The exercise scenario was deliberately chaotic, a hostage situation in a simulated embassy compound with multiple buildings, civilian populations, and time-sensitive objectives. Teams would rotate through different roles, testing their ability to support each other under extreme stress. Elena found herself assigned to Team Alpha for the first rotation, working alongside candidates who had previously avoided partnering with her. The team leader, Captain Sarah Phoenix Martinez, was one of only 3 women in the program and had maintained careful neutrality in the ongoing tension surrounding Elena's presence. Rodriguez, Martinez said during the planning phase, I've watched your individual performance. Your precision is exceptional, but we need to find a way to integrate your methods with our timing. Can you adapt without compromising your effectiveness? It was the first time anyone had asked Elena to contribute rather than conform. I can modify my approach to support the team's rhythm while maintaining accuracy standards. The simulation began with Elena feeling a different kind of pressure. Instead of trying to prove herself through individual excellence, she focused on enhancing her teammates' performance. When Captain Stevens struggled with a long-range shot, Elena quietly coached him through the breathing technique her grandfather had taught her. When the team's timing began to falter under stress, she used her methodical approach to provide a steady rhythm that others could follow. For the first time since arriving at Nellis, Elena felt like part of a team rather than an outsider trying to force her way in. Team Alpha's performance exceeded expectations, achieving a 91% success rate, the highest of any team that day. More importantly, the post-mission debrief revealed something that hadn't appeared in previous exercises: genuine teamwork. Rodriguez, Lieutenant Colonel Carter said after reviewing the results, your performance today demonstrated significant improvement in team integration. What changed? I stopped trying to prove I belonged and started focusing on helping my teammates succeed, sir. Carter nodded approvingly. That's the difference between an individual performer and a Sky Reaper. We'll continue monitoring your progress. As the candidates dispersed, Elena noticed Hawk watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. For the first time, it wasn't dismissive or challenging. It was thoughtful, as if he was reassessing assumptions he had held for weeks. That evening, Elena called her grandfather with news of the day's success. His pride was evident even across the miles that separated them. You're learning what I tried to teach you all those years ago, Mija. Strength isn't about standing alone. It's about lifting others up while staying true to yourself. Outside her window, the lights of Nellis Air Force Base seemed brighter somehow, each one representing not just individual service members, but part of a larger whole. Elena touched the ring on her finger and felt, for the first time since arriving in Nevada, that she might actually belong here. The world was becoming more dangerous, but she was becoming stronger, not just as an individual warrior, but as part of something greater than herself. The emergency klaxon shattered the pre-dawn silence at Nellis Air Force Base, its urgent wail cutting through the Nevada desert like a blade. Elena jolted awake in her quarters, muscle memory from weeks of training propelling her into action before her mind fully processed the sound. Red lights strobed in the corridors as she joined the stream of candidates rushing toward Hangar 7. Lieutenant Colonel Carter stood before a massive digital display showing satellite imagery of a compound in the Middle East. His usual calm demeanor had been replaced by the focused intensity of a combat veteran facing real crisis. At 0230 local time, Terrorist forces overran the American diplomatic compound in Kandahar, Carter announced, his voice cutting through the assembled candidates like a precision instrument. 47 hostages are confirmed alive, including Ambassador Patricia Williams and her family. The terrorists have made it clear that any rescue attempt will result in immediate execution of all hostages. Elena felt her stomach tighten as the implications became clear. This wasn't another training exercise. This was the kind of real-world crisis that Sky Reapers were designed to handle. General Morrison entered the hangar, his presence commanding immediate attention. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Intelligence suggests the terrorists plan to begin executing hostages at sunrise local time, approximately 6 hours from now. Conventional rescue operations are impossible due to the compound's location and the terrorists' positioning. The satellite imagery revealed the tactical nightmare. Hostages scattered across multiple buildings, terrorist snipers positioned on rooftops, and civilian populations in the surrounding area that made traditional airstrikes impossible. This mission requires surgical precision that pushes the absolute limits of aerial marksmanship, Morrison continued. Shots must be taken from F-22 Raptors traveling at high speed with zero margin for error. A single missed shot could trigger a massacre. Carter activated the advanced simulation system, the same technology used for training, but now loaded with real-time intelligence data. Every pilot in this program will attempt the mission profile. Success requires neutralizing 12 terrorist positions while avoiding civilian casualties and maintaining aircraft survivability. Elena watched as her fellow candidates entered the simulator one by one. The mission parameters were beyond anything they had trained for. Shots that required hitting targets the size of a human head from aircraft traveling at over 500 miles per hour, with wind conditions and building structures creating variables that changed by the second. Hawk emerged from his simulation attempt looking shaken, his usual confidence replaced by grim determination. His score, 63%, flashed on the monitor, well below mission requirements. "The targeting solutions are impossible," he announced to the assembled group. "The computer systems can't calculate fast enough to compensate for all the variables. We're asking technology to do something it wasn't designed for." Captain Martinez followed with a 58% score. Captain Stevens managed 61%. One by one, the best pilots in the program failed to achieve the precision required to save 47 innocent lives. Elena felt the weight of her grandfather's ring on her finger as she approached the simulator. The familiar calm that preceded her best performances settled over her like a protective cloak. As the virtual cockpit materialized around her, she closed her eyes and heard Carlos Rodriguez's voice across the years. "Technology without soul is just noise." When the simulation began, Elena did something that none of her predecessors had attempted. Instead of relying solely on the aircraft's targeting computers, she began calculating solutions manually, using the mathematical principles her grandfather had taught her on that dusty Texas range. Wind speed, distance, aircraft velocity, target movement, all processed through techniques that predated computer assistance by decades. Her first shot found its mark, then her second. The rhythm of her grandfather's breathing exercises synchronized with the aircraft's movement, creating a harmony between human intuition and mechanical precision that the simulation had never recorded. When Elena emerged from the simulator, the hangar had fallen completely silent. Her score, 94%, glowed on the monitor like a beacon of impossible hope. General Morrison stepped forward, his weathered face showing the first sign of optimism since the crisis began. "Rodriguez, explain your methodology." "Sir, I combined traditional marksmanship calculations with the aircraft's targeting systems. Instead of letting the computer do all the work, I used manual calculations to verify and adjust each shot. My grandfather's techniques provided the foundation for precision that technology enhanced rather than replaced." Carter studied the simulation data with growing amazement. "The targeting solutions you calculated manually were more accurate than our most advanced computers. How is that possible?" "Human intuition can process variables that computers struggle with, sir. Wind patterns, atmospheric conditions, the subtle movements that indicate a target's next position. These require judgment that comes from experience and training, not just processing power." Hawk approached, his expression showing something Elena had never seen before, genuine respect mixed with disbelief. You just accomplished something that every expert said was impossible. How do we know it wasn't just luck? Run the simulation again, Elena replied simply. Her second attempt yielded a 96% score, her third, 95%. The consistency was undeniable. Elena Rodriguez had found a way to achieve precision that surpassed the capabilities of the military's most advanced technology. General Morrison made the decision that would change everything. Rodriguez, your mission qualified for Operation Guardian Angel. We deploy in 4 hours. The weight of 47 lives settled on Elena's shoulders like a mantle of responsibility that she had trained her entire life to carry. Around her, the candidates who had doubted her abilities now looked at her with a mixture of awe and gratitude. As the hangar erupted into preparation activity, Elena stepped outside into the Nevada dawn and called her grandfather. When Carlos Rodriguez answered, his voice carried the wisdom of a man who had faced similar moments of truth. Mija, I can hear it in your voice. The moment has come. 47 people are going to die unless I can do something that everyone says is impossible, abuelo. Then you'll do the impossible. That's what Rodriguez blood is for, rising to meet the moment when everything depends on getting it right. Elena touched the ring on her finger and felt the strength of 3 generations flowing through her. In a few hours, she would climb into an F-22 Raptor and attempt something that would either save dozens of innocent lives or haunt her forever. The world was watching, her family's honor was at stake, and 47 people were counting on techniques learned on a dusty Texas range to bring them home alive. The pre-flight briefing room at Nellis Air Force Base hummed with the controlled tension of a military operation balanced on the edge of impossibility. Elena sat among the mission planners, intelligence officers and senior command staff, acutely aware that she was the youngest person in the room and the only one who would actually pull the trigger when the moment came. General Morrison stood before a 3-dimensional holographic display of the Kandahar compound, each building rendered in precise detail based on satellite imagery and intelligence reports. Red dots marked terrorist positions, blue dots indicated hostage locations, and yellow zones showed civilian areas that absolutely could not be compromised. The window of opportunity is closing rapidly, Morrison announced, his voice carrying the weight of command decisions that would echo through history. Intelligence confirms that executions will begin at sunrise local time, approximately 3 hours from now. Weather conditions are deteriorating, with increasing wind speeds that will make precision shots even more challenging. Elena studied the tactical display with the methodical focus her grandfather had taught her. Each terrorist position presented unique challenges. Rooftop snipers with clear fields of fire, gunmen positioned near hostages in ways that made traditional rescue impossible, and a command structure that could trigger mass executions with a single radio transmission. Lieutenant Colonel Carter activated a detailed mission profile. Rodriguez will pilot a specially configured F-22 Raptor equipped with precision targeting systems and modified ammunition designed for urban combat scenarios. The aircraft will make multiple passes at varying altitudes and speeds, engaging targets in a sequence designed to prevent terrorist communication and retaliation. The mathematics were staggering. 12 precision shots from an aircraft traveling at speeds exceeding 500 miles per hour, with wind conditions that changed by the minute and target positions that offered margins of error measured in inches rather than feet. "Ma'am," interrupted Major Sarah Chen, the mission's intelligence coordinator, "we've received updated satellite imagery showing that the terrorists have repositioned several hostages. The targeting solutions will need to be recalculated in real time during the mission." Elena felt the familiar calm settling over her, the same mental state she had experienced countless times on her grandfather's range. "I can adapt to changing conditions, sir. The manual calculation methods allow for real-time adjustments that computer systems can't match." Hawk, who had been selected as Elena's wingman despite their previous conflicts, stepped forward. "Rodriguez, I need to understand your methodology. If something happens to you during the mission, someone else needs to be able to complete the objectives." For the first time since arriving at Nellis, Elena saw genuine respect in Hawk's eyes, rather than skepticism or challenge. She spent the next 30 minutes explaining the breathing techniques, mathematical principles, and intuitive adjustments that her grandfather had refined through decades of military service. "It's not just about the calculations," she concluded. "It's about finding the rhythm between human intuition and mechanical precision. The aircraft becomes an extension of your body, the weapon becomes an extension of your will, and the target becomes a problem that can only be solved through perfect harmony between all elements. General Morrison listened to the explanation with growing understanding. Your grandfather's techniques, they're not outdated at all, are they? They're foundational skills that modern technology was built to enhance, not replace. Exactly, sir. Technology amplifies capability, but it can't replace the human elements that make precision possible under extreme conditions. The final mission briefing revealed details that made Elena's stomach tighten with anticipation. She would be flying alone, with Hawk providing overwatch and communication support from a safe distance. The shots would need to be taken in a specific sequence to prevent terrorist retaliation, and each engagement would last only seconds before she would need to reposition for the next target. As the briefing concluded, Elena found herself face to face with the weight of expectation that had been building since her first day at Nellis. 47 innocent people were counting on skills learned from a 75-year-old veteran in the Texas desert to bring them home alive. Rodriguez, General Morrison said, as the room began to clear, I want you to know that your grandfather would be proud of what you're about to attempt. Carlos Rodriguez earned his reputation by doing the impossible when everything was on the line. Today, you have the chance to honor that legacy. Elena nodded, feeling the weight of her grandfather's ring on her finger. Sir, I won't let those hostages down. I won't let my family down. And I won't let the Sky Reapers down. The walk to the flight line felt both eternal and instantaneous. Elena's F-22 Raptor sat gleaming under the Nevada sun, its sleek lines representing the pinnacle of American aerospace engineering. Ground crews made final preparations, while Elena conducted her pre-flight inspection with the methodical precision that had become her trademark. As she climbed into the cockpit, Elena's phone buzzed with a final message from her grandfather. Fly with honor, shoot with precision, and remember that you carry the strength of everyone who believes in you. Te amo, mija. The canopy closed with a soft hiss, sealing Elena into the technological marvel that would carry her into the most important mission of her life. Around her, the aircraft systems hummed with readiness, but she knew that success would ultimately depend on skills that no computer could replicate. Guardian Angel, this is Control, came the voice through her headset. You are cleared for takeoff. 47 lives are counting on you. Elena advanced the throttles and felt the F-22's twin engines respond with a roar that seemed to shake the earth itself. As the aircraft lifted off from Nellis Air Force Base, she touched her grandfather's ring one final time and whispered a prayer that had been passed down through 3 generations of military service. The mission to save 47 innocent lives had begun, and Elena Rodriguez was about to discover whether tradition and innovation could combine to achieve the impossible. The F-22 Raptor sliced through pre-dawn darkness over the Middle East, its engines carrying Elena toward the most critical mission of her life. Below, the lights of Kandahar marked the location where 47 innocent lives hung in the balance. Guardian Angel, this is Overwatch, Hawk's voice crackled through her headset. Target area visual, wind speeds increasing to 15 knots, variable direction. Elena checked her instruments, feeling the familiar calm that preceded her best performances. Copy Overwatch, beginning descent to engagement altitude. The diplomatic compound appeared on her targeting display, a maze of buildings that had become a prison. Red dots marked terrorist positions, blue indicated hostages, yellow showed civilian areas that could not be compromised. Guardian Angel, updated intelligence shows terrorists moving hostages, General Morrison's voice transmitted from Nellis. Adapt targeting solutions in real time. Elena's grandfather's training took control as she processed the changing situation. Instead of relying on pre-programmed data, she began calculating manually, using techniques refined in Vietnam jungles and perfected on a Texas range. First target acquired, she announced, settling into the breathing rhythm that synchronized her heartbeat with aircraft movement. The terrorist sniper on the northeast tower materialized through her targeting system, barely visible against darkness. Wind speed, aircraft velocity, target distance, all processed through human intuition enhanced by technology. The shot had to be perfect. A miss would trigger massacre. The weapon fired with controlled thunder. Through her targeting system, Elena watched the sniper collapse, neutralized before he could harm hostages below. Target 1 eliminated. No terrorist response. The next 7 minutes became a deadly ballet of precision and movement. Elena's F-22 carved impossible paths through sky as she engaged target after target, each shot requiring split-second calculations that pushed human capability beyond limits. Target 2, a gunman near hostages in the main building. Elena's shot found its mark through a window barely larger than the projectile. Target 3, terrorist commander on a rooftop. The shot required compensating for wind shear that would confuse computer systems, but Elena's manual calculations proved flawless. "Guardian Angel, your accuracy is beyond anything I've witnessed," Hawk transmitted. "How are you maintaining precision at these speeds?" Elena remained focused on the rhythm connecting her grandfather's teachings with technological marvel. Each shot felt like conversation between past and present, tradition and innovation in perfect harmony. Targets 4 through 8 fell rapidly, Elena's F-22 dancing through sky like a predator in perfect hunting ground. Terrorists below had no time to react, no opportunity to harm hostages, no chance to escape precision raining from darkness. Multiple targets eliminated, hostages secure, beginning final sequence. The last 4 targets presented greatest challenge. Terrorists positioned requiring shots through multiple obstacles, with margins measured in fractions of inches. Elena's aircraft screamed through sky at speeds making conventional marksmanship impossible, but grandfather's techniques transformed impossible into inevitable. Target 9, eliminated through a gap between buildings lasting milliseconds. Target 10, neutralized compensating for 3 wind patterns. Target 11, precision defying physics and probability. Final target acquired, Elena announced, lining up the shot completing the mission. The terrorist leader stood on the central building, weapon trained on hostages including Ambassador Williams and family. Elena's breathing matched grandfather's rhythm, finger steady as she calculated final solution. Wind, distance, movement, position, processed through techniques passed down 3 generations. The shot fired with perfect precision, striking the leader and ending the threat. All targets eliminated, hostages secure and unharmed. "Guardian Angel, outstanding performance," General Morrison's voice carried amazement. "You've accomplished what experts considered impossible. Return to base." As Elena's F-22 climbed away, she watched rescue helicopters extract hostages. 47 innocent people would return home because tradition and innovation found harmony in pre-dawn darkness over Kandahar. Overwatch, this is Guardian Angel. Mission complete. All hostages safe. Copy, Guardian Angel. Most incredible marksmanship I've ever witnessed. Your grandfather would be proud. Elena touched the ring on her finger, feeling Carlos Rodriguez's presence in the cockpit. His techniques had traveled from Texas ranch to Middle Eastern skies to save innocent lives. The flight home would give her time to process what occurred, but for now Elena Rodriguez allowed herself quiet satisfaction. She had honored family legacy, while proving military aviation's future belonged to those blending tradition's best with innovation's promise. 47 lives saved, mission accomplished, legacy preserved. The Nevada sun blazed overhead as Elena's F-22 Raptor touched down at Nellis Air Force Base, its landing gear kissing the runway with the gentle precision of a mission flawlessly executed. Ground crews rushed to meet the aircraft, but Elena remained in the cockpit for a moment longer, letting the magnitude of what had just occurred settle into her consciousness. 47 innocent lives saved, 0 civilian casualties. Mission parameters exceeded in every measurable category. As the canopy opened, Elena was greeted by a sight that would remain etched in her memory forever. The entire Sky Reapers training cadre standing at attention on the flight line, led by General Morrison, whose weathered face showed an expression of profound respect and admiration. "Captain Rodriguez," the general said as Elena climbed down from her aircraft, "on behalf of the United States Air Force and 47 grateful families, I want to express our deepest appreciation for your extraordinary performance today." Elena stood at attention, still processing the transition from combat operations to ceremonial recognition. "Sir, I was simply applying the training and techniques that this program provided." "Negative, Captain. What you accomplished today went far beyond training. You demonstrated the kind of innovation and adaptability that defines the very best of American military tradition." Hawk approached, his expression showing none of the skepticism or challenge that had characterized their previous interactions. Instead, Elena saw genuine respect mixed with something that looked remarkably like humility. Rodriguez, he said, extending his hand, I owe you an apology. I spent weeks questioning whether your methods belonged in modern warfare, whether tradition had any place alongside advanced technology. Today you proved that the best warriors are those who can honor the past while embracing the future. Elena shook his hand, feeling the weight of acceptance that had been so long in coming. Thompson, your challenge made me stronger. You forced me to find ways to integrate my grandfather's teachings with team dynamics. Without that pressure, I might never have developed the adaptability that made today's mission possible. Lieutenant Colonel Carter stepped forward with a tablet displaying preliminary mission analysis. Rodriguez, the precision you demonstrated today has rewritten our understanding of what's possible in aerial marksmanship. Your manual calculation methods achieved accuracy rates that exceeded our most advanced computer systems by significant margins. Sir, it wasn't about replacing technology. It was about finding the harmony between human intuition and mechanical precision. My grandfather always said that the weapon is just a tool. The warrior's heart and mind are what make the difference. General Morrison nodded approvingly. Carlos Rodriguez taught you well. I've spoken with him this morning, and he wanted me to convey his pride in your accomplishment. He also said something that I think summarizes today perfectly. The strongest traditions are those that grow stronger by embracing change. The formal debrief took place in the same hangar where Elena had first felt the sting of isolation and doubt. Now, as she stood before her fellow candidates and instructors, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Where once there had been skepticism, now there was respect. Where once there had been division, now there was unity forged through shared purpose and proven capability. The Sky Reapers program has a new graduate, General Morrison announced to the assembled group. Captain Elena Rodriguez has not only met every requirement for certification, she has redefined what those requirements mean. Her performance today demonstrates that the future of elite military aviation belongs to those who can blend the wisdom of experience with the promise of innovation. The applause that followed felt different from the polite recognition Elena had received for previous achievements. This was the sound of genuine acceptance, of barriers broken and prejudices overcome through competence and courage. Captain Martinez approached after the ceremony, her expression showing the kind of professional admiration that Elena had hoped to earn since her first day at Nellis. Rodriguez, you've opened doors that will benefit every woman who follows in your footsteps. But more than that, you've shown all of us that excellence comes in many forms. As the day wound toward evening, Elena found herself alone on the observation deck overlooking the flight line where her journey had begun. The F-22 that had carried her to victory sat gleaming under the Nevada sun, a technological marvel that had been transformed into an instrument of precision through the application of techniques learned on a dusty Texas ranch. Her secure phone buzzed with an incoming call from the number she knew by heart. Mija, her grandfather's voice carried across the miles with warmth that seemed to embrace her through the electronic connection. I've been watching the news reports. The whole world is talking about what you accomplished today. Abuelo, I couldn't have done it without everything you taught me. Your techniques, your wisdom, your belief that tradition and progress could work together. That's what made the difference. No, Elena. What made the difference was your courage to be yourself while lifting others up. That's the true measure of a warrior, not just individual excellence, but the ability to make everyone around you better. Elena touched the ring on her finger, feeling the weight of legacy that had carried her through the darkest moments of doubt and uncertainty. What happens now, Abuelo? I've achieved everything I dreamed of, but it feels like this is just the beginning. Now you become the teacher, Mija. You pass on what you've learned to the next generation, just as I passed it on to you. The circle continues, and the tradition grows stronger. As the call ended, Elena remained on the observation deck watching the sun set over the Nevada desert. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve her country and honor her family's legacy. But tonight, she allowed herself to savor the satisfaction of a mission accomplished and a dream realized. The Sky Reapers had a new member. The military had a new understanding of what was possible, and Elena Rodriguez had proven that the future belonged to those brave enough to honor the past while embracing tomorrow's promise. The morning sun cast long shadows across Arlington National Cemetery as Elena Rodriguez. Morrison walked slowly among the white marble headstones, her 7-year-old daughter Sophia's small hand clasped firmly in her own. The autumn air carried the crisp promise of winter, and the distant sound of a military funeral's 21-gun salute echoed across the hallowed grounds. "Mama, tell me again about great-grandpa Carlos," Sophia said, her dark eyes reflecting the same intensity that had driven 3 generations of Rodriguez warriors to serve their country with distinction. Elena knelt beside the headstone that bore her grandfather's name, its surface polished to mirror brightness, despite the 2 years that had passed since his funeral. The inscription read simply, "Sergeant Major Carlos Rodriguez, Vietnam veteran, beloved grandfather, teacher of warriors." "He was the strongest man I ever knew, mija," Elena said, using the same endearment her grandfather had used with her. "He taught me that true strength comes not from standing alone, but from lifting others up while staying true to yourself." Sophia traced the eagle emblem carved into the marble with her small finger. "Will I be a warrior like you and great-grandpa?" Elena smiled, remembering asking her grandfather the same question decades ago on a dusty Texas ranch. "That's for you to decide when you're older, but whatever you choose to do, remember that the greatest victories come from serving something larger than yourself." The years since Operation Guardian Angel had transformed Elena's life in ways she could never have imagined. Her marriage to Marcus Thompson, the man who had once questioned her place in the Sky Reapers, had surprised everyone, including themselves. Their relationship had evolved from professional rivalry to mutual respect to deep love built on shared values and complementary strengths. Marcus now served as Director of Advanced Pilot Training at Nellis Air Force Base, where he had revolutionized the curriculum to include the traditional marksmanship techniques that Elena had proven so effective. The Rodriguez method was now standard training for all elite aviation programs, bridging the gap between technological innovation and time-tested fundamentals. Elena herself had risen to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, commanding the Sky Reapers unit that had become the military's most requested special operations asset. Under her leadership, the program had expanded to include both men and women, with selection based purely on capability rather than gender or background. The diplomatic compound rescue had become a case study taught at military academies worldwide, but Elena knew that the mission's true significance lay not in its tactical brilliance, but in its demonstration that excellence could emerge from unexpected sources when tradition and innovation worked in harmony. "Colonel Rodriguez?" A young voice interrupted her thoughts. Elena turned to see Second Lieutenant Maria Santos, a recent Sky Reapers graduate, whose own journey had been inspired by Elena's example. "Lieutenant Santos, what brings you to Arlington today?" The young officer gestured toward a nearby section where newer graves marked the resting places of recent conflicts. "Visiting my brother. He was killed in Afghanistan 3 years ago. I wanted to tell him that I made it through the program." Elena understood the weight of that pilgrimage. Military families carried burdens that civilian society rarely comprehended. The constant awareness that service could demand the ultimate sacrifice, the pride mixed with fear that came with each deployment, the knowledge that freedom's price was often paid in blood. "Your brother would be proud," Elena said simply. "The Sky Reapers are stronger because of officers like you, who understand that our mission is about protecting those who can't protect themselves." As Lieutenant Santos walked away to continue her private conversation with memory, Elena reflected on the changes that 7 years had brought to her world. The military had evolved, slowly but steadily, to embrace the principle that excellence transcended traditional boundaries. Women now served in combat roles that had been closed to them for generations, and the success of pioneers like Elena had paved the way for others to follow. But progress had come with costs. Elena's grandfather had lived long enough to see her receive the Distinguished Flying Cross for the Kandahar mission, but his health had declined rapidly in his final years. His death had left a void that no amount of professional success could fill, though his teachings continued to guide her decisions and shape her leadership philosophy. "Mama, why are you crying?" Sophia asked, her young voice filled with concern. Elena wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Sometimes we cry when we're happy and sad at the same time, mija. Happy because we remember someone we loved, sad because we miss them. Like how I feel when you go on missions." The question hit Elena with unexpected force. Her daughter had grown up in a military family, understanding from an early age that service sometimes required separation and sacrifice. But hearing those words from her 7-year-old child brought home the reality that the cycle of service and sacrifice continued across generations. Yes, exactly like that. But remember, when people serve their country, they're protecting all the families like ours. Great-Grandpa Carlos served so that you and I could live in freedom. I serve so that your children will have the same opportunities. Sophia nodded with the solemn understanding that military children develop early. Will you teach me to shoot like Great-Grandpa taught you? Elena smiled, remembering her grandfather's patient instruction on that Texas range where her journey had truly begun. When you're old enough, if that's what you want to learn. But first, you need to understand that weapons are tools for protecting others, not for solving problems or showing off. As they prepared to leave Arlington, Elena took one last look at her grandfather's headstone. The eagle emblem seemed to catch the morning light, its wings spread wide as if ready to take flight. She touched the ring on her finger, the same ring Carlos Rodriguez had worn through 3 wars, and passed to her on the eve of her greatest challenge. "Thank you, Abuelo," she whispered, "for everything you taught me, everything you believed in, and everything you made possible." The drive back to their home near Nellis Air Force Base took them through the Nevada desert, where Elena had first learned to blend tradition with innovation, where she had discovered that the future belonged to those brave enough to honor the past while embracing tomorrow's promise. 7 years later, that lesson continued to guide her path as she prepared the next generation of warriors to face challenges that hadn't yet been imagined. The Sky Reapers program had evolved, the military had changed, and the world had grown more complex. But the fundamental truth her grandfather had taught her remained constant. True strength came from serving something greater than oneself. As Sophia fell asleep in her car seat, Elena Rodriguez Morrison looked toward the horizon where her next mission awaited, carrying forward a legacy of service that would endure long after her own chapter in the family's military history had been written. As we reach the end of Elena Rodriguez's extraordinary journey, we're reminded that the greatest victories in life aren't always measured by medals or recognition, but by the barriers we break and the paths we create for others to follow. Elena's story teaches us that true strength isn't about proving we belong. It's about lifting others up while staying true to our deepest values. Her grandfather's wisdom echoes through every chapter of this tale. Tradition and innovation aren't opposing forces, but complementary strengths that create something more powerful than either could achieve alone. Elena discovered that honoring the past doesn't mean rejecting progress, and embracing the future doesn't require abandoning the lessons that shaped us. The Sky Reapers program was forever changed by a young woman who refused to choose between being herself and serving something greater. She proved that excellence comes in many forms, that leadership emerges from unexpected places, and that the most important battles are often fought not against external enemies, but against the limitations others place on our potential. Elena's marriage to Marcus Thompson reminds us that even the strongest opposition can transform into the deepest respect when we approach differences with open hearts and minds. Their partnership demonstrates that the best relationships are built not on similarity but on shared values and mutual growth. Perhaps most importantly, Elena's story shows us that legacy isn't just about what we accomplish. It's about what we make possible for those who come after us. Every barrier she broke, every stereotype she shattered, every moment she chose courage over comfort, created opportunities for countless others to follow their own dreams of service and excellence. What did Elena's journey teach you about overcoming obstacles in your own life? How do you balance honoring tradition while embracing innovation in your personal or professional challenges? We'd love to hear your thoughts about this story of courage, determination, and the power of staying true to yourself while serving something greater. Share your reflections in the comments below. And if this tale of military honor and family legacy resonated with you, type honor in the comments. It helps us know you stayed with Elena's journey to the very end and supports our mission of bringing you more inspiring stories like this one. Looking for more stories of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds of military service? Check out our collection of military narratives in the cards below, where you'll find tales of heroism that span generations and remind us why freedom isn't free. Remember, the greatest honor isn't in never falling, but in rising every time we're knocked down, carrying forward the dreams of those who believed in us when we couldn't believe in ourselves. Fly high, serve with honor, and never forget that your story has the power to inspire others to reach for their own impossible dreams. Thank you for joining Elena Rodriguez on her journey from a dusty Texas ranch to the skies over the Middle East. May her courage inspire you to break your own barriers and honor your own legacy of service.